This elevated hip internal rotation kinetic stretch is a great option for people who have really limited hip mobility and aren't able to get down into the 90-90. So for this exercise, you're gonna need a bench or a box, something that is a little bit higher. The higher the object, the more intense of a stretch, the more mobility required. So the lower it is, it'll be a little bit easier for you to get into the movement if you are really limited in your mobility. Now, in this position, we wanna set up with the leg up on the bench. And then the key here is going to be thinking about the compass leading the movement, and the compass is on our belt buckle. So if you had a belt buckle, it would be right here in the front of on your pelvis. And as you are thinking about doing this movement, you're rotating that belt buckle towards this leg. Now, as we're doing that, we're kind of sinking into this hip, and you should feel this nice deep hip stretch right through here. A lot of people, when they do this, just kind of go into the rotation, or they rotate their shoulders. Again, shoulders are not doing the movement. It is the belt buckle. So we want to only rotate as far as we can till we feel this nice stretch. Now, what we want to be thinking about is actively pulling ourselves into this stretch, since it is a kinetic stretch. So the movement we want to be thinking about is going to be rotating our foot and ankle up. We should be feeling these muscles work. So when we're here, we are going to be thinking about actively rotating and pulling ourselves into this movement, and then driving the foot down and pushing ourselves back to the start, right? So pulling ourselves into the movement here, and then pushing back into the start position. That is a very different feel for me in this exercise than just rotating into it and rotating back, right? That is just using gravity, using my other leg, just kind of moving through without being very intentional. The key with the kinetic stretch is intention. It can look the same, but be a completely different exercise based off how it feels. So one last time, we are thinking about actively pulling this belt buckle towards our glutes, towards our hip, feeling a nice deep stretch, taking 3 to 5 seconds to get there, and then pushing ourselves back to the start. So the leg, all of these hip muscles are leading the movement and driving the movement, and the belt buckle is the thing moving. If you practice this really intentionally, you should learn how to build a lot of awareness of your hip muscles, learn how to find an active stretch, which is really helpful if you're needing this type of elevated position. It means you need a lot more hip mobility. Once you kind of learn how to do that, you should feel you can get into a little bit deeper of a stretch. Eventually you can progress to a higher object, and maybe even eventually get into that 90-90 position on the floor. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of patience, and probably a lot of stretching on top of this, but a kinetic stretch is a really great way to augment your other flexibility practice. So make sure that you're consistent with it, be super intentional, and over time, you should see progress.